I knew I was going to forget to record, and I lived up to it. I lived down to it. So I'm just going to quickly say this is about how creating a tombstone uh, changes a life, and we're going through a process that I went through, and we're going to then talk about the tombstone itself. So first, I got the diagnosis of dementia, which was a big shock, and I was at the point where I felt all the dementia and the death, but then one day I said, wait a second, I'm still living. And so that already created a situation that was new in life. There's me, and I'm dying, and I'm also living. So that was a switch in me and in the world that I was living in. And then as a little bit more time went along, I realized there's dying and there's living that I'm doing, but they're actually connected. I'm I'm living and dying at the same time. And I'm feeling that because I know I'm dying, people always say, well, everybody's going to die. But when I got the diagnosis of dementia and I realized it became much more immediate. So had an immediacy of dying and an immediacy of living. And I felt that knowing that I'm dying makes my living richer, and my living is allowing me to make my dying more meaningful. So wait a second, there's a dynamic going on here. And the phrase that I assigned to it was, when living and dying dance a duet, what music will you play? What music will I play? And this is all changing my way of looking at it. It's not just dementia, and I have no chance of anything other than degrading with dementia. The way I started looking at it is living and dying are dancing their duet, but I can play some music. I don't know if the music is going to affect their duet, but the music affects me and how I relate to them. So this whole process, and I'm going from step to step, and it's uh, it's developing, and I'm changing, and my world is changing. And I'll just stop here for a moment to say what happens is I'm changing, and I'm just going along with it. These are not conscious changes that I've decided on. I'm changing. So anybody who relates to me, and I'm saying this for people that you may know who have dementia, as you try to relate to them, you have to, not have to, but the person is changing and the person's world is changing. And to try to keep up with that is part of what a caregiver's or a person who's dealing with dementia, a person with dementia, uh, has to do. So my reality was changing. My reality was constantly changing, and I'm creating my own reality. And this is all just happening to me. It's not something I'm deciding to do. My reality is changing. So, for example, the old rules are broken. So, the world, doctors or whatever, first call this MCI, mild cognitive impairment. That's the label that they put on a person. And okay, that's right. I am MCI, mild cognitive impairment, but I'm feeling something completely different. As my thinking is going down, I'm completely feeling that my guts, my feelings are having more room. My feelings are having more a part of my life than what they had up to then. My profession was as a management consultant and lines and boxes and all those kind of things. And now I'm in a different world where my brain is less working, out of my control. So I can't, no reason to even worry about that. It's a fact. But that's freeing up my feelings. So for example, I created a new phrase. I said, no, I'm not MCI, mild cognitive impairment. I created the phrase MEE, mild emotional enhancement. Well, that's what I really am. That's how I define myself. That's how I present myself. And The only thing that allowed me to think, for heaven's sakes, about creating a new label for myself is the dementia freed me up from all kinds of stuff, assumptions. And so I'll just say dementia is my worst enemy, and dementia is my best friend. It's I use the other phrase, dementia is enough to make you crazy because the world is completely changing, and this is part of it. They call me damaged. I said, I'm not damaged. I'm released. My mind is thinking less and my guts are feeling more. Um, I relate to the world not through my brain as much, but through my emotions. It happens all the time. For example, somebody told me I give talks in different places, and somebody mentioned a talk I had given somewhere, and I had no recollection of it. And they said, "Well, that place that had that tree outside. Oh, yeah, I remember that." In other words, things that I connect with through emotions, all kinds of things, people and relating to people and all kinds of stuff like that. If I do it through emotions, it's much different. When I'm on my walks, if I see pretty flowers, when I touch them, I now touch flowers. I see them, but then, so all I'm saying, I want to say is, please understand that as we get to the tombstone, emotions are playing a much larger role in my life and in I and maybe in others people's lives than what they had before. And again, this I want to just also emphasize this is not hypothetical. For example, when living and dying dance a duet, what music will you play? That could sound like a fancy sentence. No, what music will I play? And I pay attention because I believe that's how I'm living my life now is with these emotions. So I feel living and dying dancing their duet inside of me. And on my walks, I always look both directions. And if there's nobody around, I start singing at the top of my voice because I enjoy doing that. So I feel living and dying dancing, but then I start singing a song appropriate to how I feel they're dancing. But sometimes I don't feel them at all. So, for example, when Living and Dying dance a duet, what music do I play? So I do have a standard song. When I don't hear them in action, I have a song. There's three verses that I won't sing, but I will sing the last verse because it's the reason why I have this song to sing for living and dying. And that last verse is, born free and life is worth living, but only worth living because you're born free. And so when living and dying are dancing away and I feel like singing and they're not bringing me a song, that expresses life is worth living, but not under any circumstance. So that's that song. So I'll just mention again, I'm doing this within the Reimagine organization. And just to be clear again, I'm not reimagining what the process of brain deterioration or dying is like. These things are happening and I'm going along with them. So I just want to make that clear. This isn't me creating some new method. This process is reimagining itself and I'm going along. So I just want to mention that that's how this thing is working. Uh, and there is a little humor here and there, like dementia is enough to make it crazy, and when the humor has to be a little black, when it gets a little blacker, dementia is a no-brainer. That's hardly humor. That's that's a tough one, but I classify it as humor. So, okay. Um, That is some general background, and also within myself, how I relate to the world. I don't function the way I did. In other words, I'm seeing all this, my world is constantly changing. I don't function as I used to. My mind works slower. I have less capacity. I often, when I'm in a simple conversation, I put up my hand and say, stop. I just can't keep up with the normal talking, so I have to stop. Noise surrounding is a big problem. I've created a vocabulary. I feel so many things and there's no word for it. So on my website, there's a page called the Dementia Cat Vocabulary, words that I created because I feel it, but I knew. For example, you hear about mindfulness all the time. Well, wait a second. For me, feelingfulness is as important as mindfulness. I think mindfulness is exactly half that me, feelingfulness and mindfulness go together. So I even put feelingfulness.com because I wanted to have its own .com to be able to refer to it easily. There's life noise. There's gut weeping. I don't like to say that I cry, but out of the box, if I'm crying, I say, well, I'm crying. But I wanted a new word for it, gut weep. Yes, tears are coming out of my eyes, but they're coming from my guts. I'm not in pain or sad or something like that. And I want to make that distinction. So I invented gut weep, etc. So this all is happening. And and during this period up to a little while ago, I called this my golden moment because I'm free. I'm getting all the benefits of release, but I'm not in the deterioration which happens with dementia, which is the slobbering and you can't put together a sentence and you can't control yourself at all. So I've been still in the golden moment where I have these impacts without getting there. Um, and I would say communications, and I'm pretty sensitive because dementia isn't easy to communicate with. And so I'm just going to quickly mention, and I wouldn't bring in politics or religion into this conversation, but the three words from the Bible, what I consider to be the three most beautiful words in the Bible, are exactly applicable to this situation. And the three words are, in Hebrew, it's Vayigash Elav Yehuda. In English, it's Judah approached him. It's Genesis 44:18, where Judah approaches Joseph. Joseph and Judah and the brothers have been having their conflicts and all that kind of stuff. And then at one point, instead of continuing the conflict, it says, Judah approached Joseph. Judah didn't come into him and start arguing or talking. I take approach to mean he found out where Joseph is at and spoke to Joseph where Joseph was at. And to me, that applies 100% to brain deterioration, aging. First, to please find out where I'm at. I'm not where I was, and I'm not even where I was yesterday. So please, somebody who's approaching me, uh, realize I'm somewhere else and talk to me that way. And I'll give you an example of that. I have almost zero capability to remember names, faces, and how I know somebody. And that's why Zoom is so good for me. Gosh, I see the faces and the names, and I know where we're at. So this problem is solved. But I tell people that, and there are people who I know who will come up to me and say, my name is such and such. We know each other. That's beautiful. Otherwise, I'm lost. So I just use this as an example of some of the changes that are going on. Physical changes, one hand's not usable, the other is becoming unusable. I get lightheaded and I walk strangely. I don't have a car. I used to use maps all the time. I get confused trying to figure out what maps is saying, etc., etc. So up to now has just been setting the stage. Let's get to creating my tombstone. But I felt it will be more meaningful if you get this feeling of where I'm at as I create my tombstone, because it's not a standard tombstone. I had a feeling one day, and what I've tried to present is I pay a lot of attention to my feeling. I I pay as much attention to my feeling as I do to my thinking. So one day I had a feeling, it said, create your tombstone. Well, I'm going to, as I'm going to tell later, I'm going to end my life and I'm going to be cremated. What do I need a tombstone? I couldn't even understand the expression. So I didn't do anything that day. And the next day, there it came again. Create your tombstone. My feelings were telling me. So that's okay. So I said, I got to do this. I'm going to be cremated, so it's not going to be a regular tombstone. I don't need it to mark my grave. What purpose do I want it to have? What do I want my tombstone to express? What will my tombstone be? Where will it be? What do I want visitors to my tombstone to feel? So when I talk about creating a tombstone, that's where I started for me creating my tombstone. And George and I had an opportunity to have a brief conversation before. And this tombstone is not the same as a whatever it is, granite tombstone with names and dates and a few words on it or something like that. So I'm using the word tombstone. For me, it is a tombstone, but I want to talk now about how much it's changed my life. And so I'm using the word tombstone, but please feel free to not take it to be a standard tombstone. It's something else. And as a matter of fact, when I tried to even figure out what my tombstone's going to be, what is my tombstone going to be? I wanted it to be, what do I bring to the world, and how is the world different because I was here? That's what I define as not the story of my life and not my eulogy or something like that. When I started this process, what do I bring to the world, and is the world different because I was here? And it took several weeks. Those aren't topics that I was able to cover quickly. It took several weeks during my walks and all kinds of places to think about things, my past, things that happened, feel my past, what it was important to me. How did I feel about certain things that happened, et cetera, et cetera. And so it took several weeks and I didn't push it. It was just there and it flowed. And I created, so in the end, my tombstone is 20 words. It's not going to be physical at all. There's 20 words that are my tombstone, and I'm going to tell you what those 20 words here in a moment. But before I do that, I want to continue this thought process or this feeling process right here. I created my tombstone and I figured out what what do I bring to the world and how is the world different because I was here? And it didn't take long before I realized my tombstone is my life stone. I'm not dead and I'm able to continue to live my life, but my tombstone turns out to be, I now think of it as my life stone. I now have this 20-word definition that is the basis of how I want to live my life. It's a beacon. It's a lighthouse to help me know my tombstone turns into my beacon of how to live my life. And so, yeah, creating my tombstone changed my life because now, not only based on all my life up to now, have I clarified for myself what I'm about. But one of the things I see often, I deal with elder people quite a bit, and I hear the terrible thing they say. It's terrible for them. They don't know what to do with themselves. They don't feel like they have meaning in their life. And with my tombstone, following my tombstone gives meaning to my life. Whenever I'm fulfilling my tombstone, I feel I'm doing what I'm here to do, and this is what it's about. And the other thing is, while I was making it during this process and didn't even know what my tombstone was going to be, and I decided I wanted it short. It's 20 words because I figured I don't know anything about these things. That's more or less what you could fit on a tombstone. So I said, well, if I was going to make a tombstone, it would be 20 words long. So I'm going to keep my tombstone that's not going to be written on anything to be 20 words long. So I'm going to tell you what my tombstone is, and it's on my website. So, but this is what happened after several weeks. What do I bring to the world? So the 20 words are to feel situations I'm in and to bring my energies to make the situations richer for the people they touch. To feel situations I'm in. Feelings have become so important. It's not, my tombstone doesn't say what I did, and not some act or some grandiose or something like that. What I bought is to feel situations I'm in and to bring my energies to make the situations richer for the people they touch. So, okay, wow, that's my beacon. It's after going through my whole life and feeling and stuff, that's what I've decided, what I've bought, then that's what's guiding me for how I'm going to live my life. And in order to make it more specific, I don't like big fancy stuff, so to make it more specific, I took one example of when that happened. When I felt the situation I was in, and I brought my energies to make the situation richer for everybody that it touches. So I took one specific example of when that happened, and I call that my audio tombstone. So that is, I won't go into it. I don't want to take the time to go into it, but it happened when I was getting the MRI. This was in Jerusalem, that where they discovered that I've got dementia, and I was sitting in the waiting room and with two women, and something happened in the waiting room. And one of the women knows a radio broadcaster in Israel, and the radio broadcaster did a 1 minute and 43-second report of what happened to the three of us in the waiting room there for the MRI. And that radio clip, the 1 minute and 43 seconds, that I call my audio tombstone because that's exactly an example of I walked in, I felt what's going on, I bought my energies, and between the three of us, some magic occurred. And that audio tombstone is also on my website. It's in Hebrew because was on Israel radio, but the translation to English is also right there with it. So this puts together uh, that's the main expression of it, the tombstone. And again, the word tombstone may not be the right word for what it is, but going through that process of creating my tombstone and then what it's done for me afterwards, it has changed my life. That's a way for me to have guidance in how I live my life. And again, to bring my energies, I go on walks. I've started to be amazed by the bricklayers when they're building buildings. You know, I would slop the cement on there, plop the brick down. But wait a second. That bricklayer puts the mortar and he puts it so carefully. Then he has a string and he puts the brick and he taps down. And I'm watching it. I think he's an artist. I'm impressed by what he's doing. So I walk up to him. I say, wow, I can't help but feeling you're an artist for what you're doing. To me, that's what I enjoy doing. That's what I do. And that's to bring my energies to a situation and make it better. Nothing fancier than that. To tell that guard at the supermarket that stands there all day, thanks, I feel safer coming into the supermarket because you're standing here doing. That's the kind of things I'm talking about. Not to bring, changes to the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how I take uh, uh, that that activity. That's what I mean for myself when I say to bring my energies to make situations for the richer for people they touch. And it also guides me in situations where maybe there's some conflict going on. And instead of getting involved in the conflict, I'll remember my tombstone, my life stone. And I'll think about it. How can I fulfill my life stone in this situation? And I've mentioned this before, and I'm Jewish, and in the Jewish faith, when you go visit somebody's tombstone, there's a tradition to put a stone on. For whatever reason, you put a stone on a person's. So somebody said, wait a second, that's not really a tombstone. How can I put a stone on your grave? So I said, you know what? This is my way of relating to the world to bring good energies. So instead of whenever you want to put a stone on my grave, on my tombstone, feel the situation you're in and bring your energies to make that situation richer. In other words, you want to put a stone on my grave, on my tombstone, please do exactly what I've set as my tombstone, and in that way you are putting a stone on my grave as far as I'm concerned. So that's it all fits together up to that point. So that's my tombstone and my lifestone, but this process just doesn't stop. It keeps going and I keep going along with it. So then, because of this, maybe because I'd heard so much about people that get to a point and don't have a feeling for what they're about and what they bring to the world and what they can do, I, I, as part of my process, I started feeling that, and I thought in life, there's ceremonies, ceremonies of transition, a graduation. Well, when you go to graduate from high school, it's a graduation from high school, but you also think about what am I going to do after high school? What kind of job do I want, or college, whatever it might be, or confirmation, or uh, anything. In transition points in life, there's often a ceremony. And I realized there is no ceremony from when you may have a retirement party when you retire, but that's only half of it because you're transitioning to something else. Just like I feel this whole process I've been, it's just been a bunch of transitions stuck together. That's what my whole process has been that I've described here. But when you get to a retirement party, okay, buy from my coworkers, but it doesn't talk about where you're going next. And my feeling is we are missing, we as society or as people, whatever it is, a ceremony of transition when I finish my work career or when I finish raising the kids. And then I get to the place where no, it's not defined what I'm doing next. If there was a ceremony or a recognized act at that point where I think about it, it's almost like where I create my tombstone and define what I'm about and what I bring to the world, then that's a transition from what's been an organized life to what my remaining years are. And I use the phrase for that, my continuing life. My life is continuing, but now I need to define it. It's how am I going to do my continuing life? So I call that, it's on the website also, preliminarily the continuing life ceremony, because I've been through my brain deterioration, I've been through creating my tombstone, I've been through creating my life stone. Well, I'm into continuing processes, and I feel this is my life. I'm not just saying a theory. I hear it about it from other people. What is my continuing life going to look like? Because I'm having a life. And as I mentioned before, the way things have worked out, my continuing life is my children and some other things, but my continuing life here, I'll start crying again. My continuing life is right here and right now. My continuing life is dementia. As I said, dementia is my worst enemy, and dementia is giving me a purpose in life. For me to talk about dementia, it's happened over and over and over again. People, they don't they don't want to hear about dementia. They need to hear about dementia. They I've been invited over to people's houses after I've talked about dementia because they want to talk about it more. So that's part of my continuing life now is to talk about dementia, just so you are a part of my process, and it's an important part of my process. And having a mission in life actually I feel gives life. When a person doesn't have a mission in their life, they may still live, but it's at a different place altogether. So people will come. I'm only talking about my own mission, and it can be uh, religion, social, personal, family. I'm only describing for myself. This is what's happened, and this is part of my continuing life is activity related to dementia. Um, and actually, George and I were also talking before. One of the things I've heard of a lot is the fellow, I thought he was in England. He goes every day to the animal shelter and he sings to the animals. He loves it. Animals know how to express that they love something, and that's his mission in life. And he's bringing his energies and going down. He may not be shy about singing at the top of his lungs. I didn't catch that part of it, but that's what he does. And it does. My mission in life is not to do something that they're going to have a statue built. No, give me a mission in life that's true to me, authentic to me, and brings my energies to make it a richer situation for whoever it touches. So that's what I consider continuing life, and it can be in any way that's appropriate for the person or a couple or whatever it might be. And I've defined, and I use it often, defining that mission as raising awareness and conversation about dementia and aging. That's when I do something like this, like suggesting this talk to reimagine, specifically I say my goal is to raise awareness and conversation about dementia and aging. And so I feel my continuing life is being full of the life I want to have because I'm doing this. I don't have to think about should I be doing more or should I be doing something different. I'm not stuck on this. If something else comes along or if I want to change this, that'll happen. But I'm saying, wow, this continuing life is making a big difference for me as I'm going along. Um, so that's up to now in this process. It's getting to be quarter till, so I'll wrap it up in a minute. But I find that I do best when I can tell a full story and be authentic about it. So I'm going to finish up this story with ending life, and this is a very difficult situation that people don't talk about. They don't talk about, a lot of times about dementia or about dying, or certainly about things like a person ending their own life and being cremated. These are all topics which are commonly not talked about. I'll say as I've gone through this whole process up to now, I've decided because of my dementia and because I volunteered at a place to really feel firsthand what dementia does to people, in addition to things I've heard and seen and know, etc., like that. So I've made the decision that I'll end my own life before I get to what I always called the black line. I'm going to end my own life because that's how I see my process taking place. And even that is evolving because I used to think of it in terms of before I get to the black line, and now process keeps going. I realize there is no black line. There's a gray zone, and I feel like I'm in the gray zone. So it gets darker, and there's all kinds of issues going on here in the circles that I hang around with people in situations like this. The phrase that's often used is people who plan to end their own life, better 2 years too early than 2 weeks too late. Because in dementia, if you if you miss your time when you're able to do it, there was a woman in one of my sessions, she said her husband swore he was going to end his life while he still could. He missed it. He declined so fast that he physically and mentally wasn't able to do what he needed to do. And for 11 years, she was his caregiver. And she knew every day he didn't want that to happen, and she didn't want that, but she missed that. That's the meaning of better 2 years too early than 2 weeks too late. But here I feel all this stuff. When you say better 2 years too early, nobody wants to miss 2 years of life that they could have lived and enjoyed and been with their family, etc. But that I take to be the reality of this situation. So I've done a lot of uh, thinking and et cetera about this. So that's that. So, and I should have said beforehand, again, I'm talking for myself. I'll put in the disclaimer, 100%. Everybody should do uh, exactly what they thought. At a certain point, I called 988. 988 is the National Suicide Hotline. And I want to emphasize this so nobody thinks I'm advocating this as a solution, as an end of life that people should use. Under no circumstance am I saying anything like that. When I look at myself, my family, my situation, my condition, that's the conclusion that I come to. And not, I don't want to apply that to anybody else in any way at all. Uh, and this, I'm going to wrap up right now. I'll just say this is, as always, this process is full of the unexpected. I feel comfortable with where I'm at and etc. But when I really think about this, there are times when I think about it, I can't breathe. I just stop breathing when I'm really feeling this. And I just wait until I can breathe again. In other words, all along this process, there's always new things happening and new experiences and new feelings and all this kind of stuff. So that's just to say that's the world that this has brought me, and it's brought all this difficulty. But when I say creating my tombstone changed my life, that's also a result of this thing that's happened to me. So that's that's 45 minutes of uh, what I'd like to say. And now with my knowledge of Zoom, I should have just now allowed everybody to unmute, whoever wants to, and whatever comments you have, or we can wrap up. You know what? I'm going to quickly uh, go through here. I will give my email address so that uh, it's of any interest. Um, and that's that. That's my life. And if that can be of any value to anybody, then that's thrilling in any way. I talk about this a lot. I would not take any money or anything like that because to me that would dirty up what I'm accomplishing here. It would, no, somebody gave money once. I said, don't do it. What I do say, if you feel that, either please bring your energies somewhere, or you want to give money, give it to some charity. Don't tell them why you're giving it, and don't tell me that you've given it. So I'm just saying this to paint the picture. This is my mission in life, and I want to do it authentically and cleanly. So anything I can do to advance my mission is what I'm about. And
Wally, I want to
people,
thank
I'll
you.
just say one thing. People say, "Wait, you don't look like you've got dementia," because I can talk like this. And this is what I feel all the time. This didn't come from my brain. I sat here and expressed my feelings of things that happen. I can talk from my feelings all day long. Just don't ask me to even keep up a little bit with anything that has to do with thinking, because it doesn't happen. Sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you, Wally, for sharing that. As a longtime classmate of yours, and Jan just put in there, she's the one that's hidden as you. Um, you you mean a lot to us, and this means a lot to us, and we appreciate it.
Thanks. That's important for me to hear because what that says to me is I am doing what my continuing life, what I've defined for it, and gosh, that's really important. Thanks so much.
Wally, my technology is worse, but I have been on the whole time. I'm Jan Courtner. We went to Sunday school together many, many years ago. But thank you so much for your openness. Um, and I will be in touch via email. Um, Very, very inspiring. I love how daily, making someone else feel better, thanking them, pointing something out about them. That is so what we all need to be doing. It's very inspiring to hear. Love you. Bye bye, Jan.
Many thanks. Many thanks. And yes, exactly what you said. Let's all do it. It takes no time and no effort. It just takes a bit of feeling. And I always say it's the distance from 0 to 1 is much more than the distance from 1 to 2. Practice it, do it. I believe you'll feel it, and it's a joy to do as much as it is, I think, to make a difference to the world.